Well, I said I see some familiar names, and welcome back and welcome to the new folks. And again, I want to compliment Catherine and other libraries and librarians for, keeping things going, particularly during COVID and on beyond that. So anyway, I'm going to disappear myself than share my screen. So you'd rather see the photos than me. So let me get rid of the gallery here. Okay, the setting sun for many animals marks the beginning of a new day. There's a nighttime community that emerges, and it teems with lurking predators and wary prey that have adapted to life with little life. Nocturnal animals have developed sensory mechanisms to spot predators. Bats, for instance, echolocate. They emit high-pitched signals and use their large ears that pick up echoes that bounce off moss and other potential meals, but a lot of the prey have their own defenses. So moths have developed a hearing system that quickly recognizes this echolocation. The moth will then fold its wings and fall down, narrowly avoiding the jaws of the swooping bat. So such survival mechanisms of both predator and prey keep the nocturnal food balance web in balance. Most wildlife species are nocturnal, and daytime sightings of them are rare. Although in Connecticut, a lot of our animals like black bears, fox, raccoon, even sometimes coyote, bobcat even will sometimes be out during the day. Food accessibility, prey species that eat food that we leave out brings these predators out. But in general, a lot of animals prefer the cover of darkness. During winter, the cold air and the lack of vegetation magnify sounds, making them eerie and scary. Each evening, the visual world changes. As you know, the light fades, images become indistinct, color disappears. Our eyes aren't so good at nighttime, unless you were Audie Murphy, the World War II hero who had night vision and he could see things other people couldn't at night. The sun retreats, and humans, along with other sight-dependent creatures of daylight, kind of do the same. As we close our doors against darkness, the woodlands, the meadows, even cities will come alive with creatures of the night. Many of the animals work what I call the night shift because darkness does offer them protection from the heat of the day. Others seek darkness to hide from predators. You'll see a lot of rabbits out at night. And I always say, what are you doing out at night? There's these hawks and other things that are going to get you, but they can hide under cover darkness as well. But as prey behavior dictates predator behavior, a large number of predators do hunt during the night. Nocturnal predators also fill an ecological niche distinct from diurnal predators, ones out in the day, by hunting at night. For example, most owls do not compete with diurnal raptors like red-tailed hawks and other hawks that are out in the day. And since most hunters are in turn hunted by something else, the predators also find protection in darkness. Prey and predator species that successfully work the night shift have adapted in various ways to their light-reduced environment. When the sun sets and darkness falls and the night world band strikes up in a wild cacophony of voices, you hear the spring peepers in the spring. Add to that a lot of the other animals and insects that make noises. You have buzzes, hoots, squawks, and whistles, grunts, howls, squeaks, and croaks. There's just a myriad of sounds enlivens our forests, meadowlands, and wetlands. I don't like to be hot, so I have my air conditioner on when it's really hot, but I do so love to open and keep a window open at night to hear all these sounds. The great horned owl's hoot may be the classic night voice, the soft hoo-hoo sounding gently in the darkness, or our real ubiquitous barred owl, that's B-A-R-R-E-D on the bottom left there, echoing through the night, who cooks for you? Pausing in a nighttime hunt, the owl lights on a tree limb and calls before continuing its rounds. Other night birds, furry and scaly critters also add to the feathered symphony. So you might know most of these animals. Top left's bobcat, in the middle is the fisher. It's not a cat, it's a weasel, so it's a fisher. On the right is the red fox. Down on the bottom is barred owl, and then on the bottom right is the gray fox, which is the only fox we have that can climb a tree. So them's the facts about owls. They're mostly nocturnal birds. They're raptors or birds of prey. They hunt for their food. They belong to the order Strigiformes. There's 18 species of owls that belong to the family Telonidae, which are the barn owls. The barn owls are in Connecticut, but they are an endangered species here in Connecticut. So not real likely you'll see one unless you have a remote barn, and they do nest in the barns and other secure places. Owls are found on every continent except Antarctica. They're found in a variety of habitats. They're found in thick forests, which we know, to open prairies and Arctic tundra. They can range in size from 4.5 inches while sitting to 33 inches, the great horned owl. So that's a pretty big owl. Females are on average 20 to 25% larger. Perhaps the most recognizable sound most of us can hear in the woods at night are the hoots of owls. There are more than 100 species of owls in the world. So, and some counts indicate that there are more than 220 species, depending on how the different owls are classified. The greatest owl diversity, as is such in a lot of birds of prey, is found in Asia, and only 19 owl species are found in the US and Canada. Despite large eyes, owls do not rely on sight to hunt. They can locate and nab prey unerringly using only their finely tuned sense of hearing. Their ears are asymmetrical. One is set higher on the head than the other, allowing that bird to orient in a vertical as well as a horizontal plane. So you'll see them move the head sometimes when they're hunting and listening, relative to which ear the sound reaches first. Not all owls hoot, and owls can make a wide range of other sounds such as screeches, whistles, barks, growls, rattles, and hisses, and you'll hear some of these as we go along. During the nesting season, owl calls can often be heard up to a mile away. Imagine that, when you hear those barred owls echoing each other. Oftentimes you'll hear one way off in the distance and one closer by. Female owls, no surprise, generally have higher voices than their mates. There are 8 species of owls in Connecticut. The barn owl there, the great horned owl, which is back here. Wait a second, didn't go back. The great horned owl, which is there, the barred owl, the long-eared owl, which is threatened and you wouldn't see it very often. The short-eared owl, which you can see, that's the bottom right. Snowy owl visits us in the winter. Not native to Connecticut. The northern saw-whet owl, which is our smallest owl, and we'll talk about that. And then the screech owl, and can you even see that owl? They're very good at hiding in the nook of trees, and sometimes you'll walk by when you're hiking and they might be there and you wouldn't even know it. The sounds of silence, not. So the barn owl makes some of the eeriest of all the owl sounds. Research has shown that a barn owl, which again, as I said, is an endangered species here in Connecticut, can be sitting 10 feet away from a mouse in an unlit barn and can locate the mouse to within 2 inches. Because these prey animals often rely on sound to alert themselves, the owl has evolved as a silent hunter. It has wide round wings and soft feathers, so it flies soundlessly. It might fly over you and you wouldn't even know it. They have a serrated edge on the first primary feather, and that helps break up and silence the flow of air across their wings. So unlike some other birds of prey, that serrated feather helps divert the air in different directions and keeps them very quiet. Another thing that aids owls in hunting is that they hunt in the same terrain night after night. So they're very familiar with the terrain they're hunting in. So if they're chasing a rabbit and there's a big boulder right there, they know to dodge it. So that helps a lot of other species as well know, their terrain, helps them more quickly hunt. It's found that the average barn owl eats 79 pounds of mice per year, and that doesn't include any other prey they might ingest. So obviously a lot of farmers like having them around in their barns. The ghostly bird's sudden chilling presence helps explain why the barn owl was it was believed to be a bad omen. Hold on a second, sorry. It's a species that hardly utters a sound for most of the year, but its screams are perfectly timed for Halloween when juveniles are starting to learn to mate. If a barn owl is in your vicinity, you might really hear the screams around this time. The barn owls have a worldwide distribution and often mate for life, but the singletons can be pretty noisy until they find a mate. The males will also scream when they're guarding the females during the spring. And if the nest or chicks are threatened by humans or predators, barn owls will emit a loud, scary hiss. So I'm going to let you hear some of their sounds. Here we go. So that one, there's a whole club that was formed a long time ago when Hollywood didn't have mood synthesizers and computers to make really scary sounds. They would use a lot of animal sounds, and certainly this barn owl was used quite often to make these scary sounds. And so every time a new movie came out, all these people would try to figure out which animal was used for that sound. Here's another sound. So that's its hiss, and here's some more. Oh, I threw that in. It's the wrong sound. Sorry. I thought these were just, that is a barred owl. So I must have them mixed up. I'm sorry. I thought I had a list here. Give me a second. Okay, so that was the barred owl. You've heard that's the most common barred owl noise. This is the 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll tell you what it is after I hear it. So that's a great horned owl scream, and birders refer to the great horned owl as the GHO, even though we know as the golf tournament is the GHO, birders call the great horned owl GHO. So if you want to be in with the birders. And that's their typical call, very well known by people. If you listen in the distance, you can hear the one calling back. And here is a squawk. Again, that's a pretty scary one. And then this is a screech owl, the little owl I showed you in the tree. No, I'm sorry, that's the great horned owl again. I've got to update my list. I'm very sorry. This is... Okay, and then the screech owl is the last one here. I'll play it for you. It's a little one that was hidden in the tree. So as you can see, all these sounds can be very scary at night if you're kind of walking around and you're like, oh, what the heck is that? A good measure to figure out what something is if you hear a noise and you're in the dark, if it's up in the air, then it's most likely an owl. If it's down low, then it's some other furry critter. Although, as I said, the gray fox does climb. So why does that animal eyes glow in the night? Scientists refer to this phenomenon as eye shine. It is a retroflectum, and it depends on this area in their eye called the tapetum lucidum, another Latin word, which means bright carpet. It's a mirror-like reflective tissue that's found behind the retina of an animal's eye. And as you can see here, we have on the top left the great horned owl. Then we have another owl in the center. I always ask everybody, what's that on the top right? And no one ever gets it. It's raccoons. They tend to hang around together. You've got the red fox on the left. And I couldn't resist the pride of lions just because all their eyes were lit up. So when you're driving at night, this is helpful to see an animal and you can slow down. Most people know about the deer in the headlights, and here you can see how bright their eyes can look. couldn't resist the cartoon. Looking good, looking good. Hold still now on the count of 3. Everybody say headlights. So some animals have successfully adapted to the night shift with this enhanced ability to see at night. So the nocturnal species like owls and raccoons have large eyes and their pupils dilate very widely that let in more light. It can enlarge the pupil by like 4 times its original size, and that will increase the amount of light the eye can gather by a factor of 16. So very, very helpful for night hunters. Light colored areas or fur or feather around the eyes, sometimes called eye discs, help increase the light reflected into the eyes. Other animals have that. The owls have it. Bobcats have white around their eyes. I always call it like white eyeliner. The back portion of the night eye of these animals is oversized and it produces a larger image, thus really aiding in hunting. The owl eyes are so large that there's no room for muscles to move their eyes, so they have to move their heads instead. I always said, well, they'd have trouble at a tennis match, but they have to move their heads back and forth. They can't move their eyes, but they do have a flexible neck. And no, it can't turn 360 degrees like Linda Blair in The Exorcist, but it can be turned almost 180 degrees to either side. And so they can look directly backwards. And again, the light rays that enter the eye are returned in the direction from which they came. And that tapetum lucidum gives the eye a second chance to absorb just as much light reflected by the retina. So it's kind of a double effect there. The light is not absorbed, it is re-emitted and gives rise to that eerie glow or the eye shine. A lot of people that have seen a moose at night, they wonder why don't I see their eyes? Well, a moose is a very tall animal and their eye shine typically is higher up than headlights, even from like a Dodge Ram truck. So that's another reason if you have moose in your area to slow down at night, because you won't likely see their eye shine, and they are dark animals. And 50 out of 50 in car crashes with moose, there's usually 1 death. So you don't really want to run into a moose. Unlike animals, humans do lack this reflective layer. So when bright lights hit our eyes, like the light from a flashlight, we don't see any reflection and we kind of like dodge our head, oh, that's too bright, or put our hands up. In darkness, cats are capable of seeing clearly in approximately only 1/6 the light needed for human vision. That's amazing. So this low light intensifies at night and especially makes them great hunters. Different species have various colors of eye shine or different eye shine IDs. The tapetum lucidum can produce green, yellow, or white effect. A rabbit's eyes shine red at night, but that of a deer or a cat is usually silvery white or yellow, while a black Labrador retriever usually has kind of a green reflection. So the next time you see a pair of glowing eyes staring you in the face, you'll know it's not a ghoulish monster, but a local animal with some well-designed nighttime eyes who's just trying to get a better look at you. I'm going to give you some deer sounds here. The first is that's a buck's dominant grunt. So I guess his mom didn't tell him that you're not supposed to grunt, but okay. And the next one is a deer wheezing. I bet you wouldn't know what the heck that is outside. This is a doe bleating. And the last one is a fawn in distress, not likely being eaten, but probably looking for its mother. Pretty cute. Pretty cute, but if you're a mother, it's probably painful. So owls have binocular vision. They must turn their heads to see things, as I said. They have a field of vision of about 110 degrees, with 70 degrees of that being binocular vision. Again, they can turn their heads up to 270 degrees total, and they can turn them upside down. They also have 3 eyelids, which help protect their eyes. The upper one is for blinking, the lower one for sleeping, and the third eyelid closes from the inside out in order to keep the eyes clean. It's kind of got an opaque covering. Bald eagles have this, bobcat have this, and they also have 14 vertebrae in their necks, and that's one of the reasons they can turn their head so far. We humans only have 7. And when we get older, like me, and they start binding up, you have trouble turning to see the cars coming. But keep your eyes open. You never know when you'll see an owl. I was driving along on a dirt road. I forget where, maybe the Adirondacks. And I saw this telephone pole and I looked right there and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's an owl. So I guess you have to use your imagination. But anyway, collective senses. Many nocturnal animals lack the high profile adaptations of real night specialists like bats and owls. Instead, they have to use their collective senses of sight, smell, hearing, even touch to make their nighttime work successful. Some nocturnal mammals are familiar to people while others are rarely seen. Obviously here, the banded masked raccoon is a well-known nocturnal hunter. Again, you might see them in the day here in Connecticut, but generally they do their hunting at night. It has excellent hearing, and which is typical of many nocturnal animals. It's very keen to strange noises. It has excellent night vision, and also, but it is colorblind. Its tactile sense of feeling sets it apart from other carnivores. However, the forepaws have an exceptional sense of touch, which is used to identify food items more than other senses. So you can watch a raccoon down on the sandy beach and you can see it feeling the sand. And then all of a sudden they'll bring up a mussel or, some kind of other mollusk just by that sense of touch. They have highly developed nerves in their paws that help them find prey, insects and other stuff. So here's one that was outside my window in nighttime. They're very curious. They hang out with a lot of other raccoons, and as you know, they make a lot of noise. So I'll give you some of those raccoon noises here. That's just a chattering from a group of raccoons. And here's kind of, oops, sorry. Here's a little squall. Here's the same thing by a younger raccoon. And if you've ever seen a bunch of raccoons, they get fussy with each other a lot. That's another looking for their siblings. And here they are getting fussy. Sometimes you'll hear that and you just think, what the heck is going on out there? So again, here's a raccoon in the daytime out in the woods. So they are long. It's a healthy raccoon. It's just going about its business. So as I said, you will see some of these animals. Here's a winter shot of a raccoon and a fox together. A lot of animals, you say, well, gee, why isn't that fox going after that raccoon? Well, in the animal world, they kind of choose their prey. That raccoon might have a bunch of other buddies under the bush there, and it might, even though the fox might prevail, he might get scratched up. Here's some stats from January to July in 2019 by town of species with rabies. As you see, the raccoon does carry more rabies. If you do see any animal out in the daylight and it's acting really strange rather than trotting along or kind of, doing its thing, then for sure stay away from it. And you should keep your distance anyway from all wild animals. So sly, screamy foxes, so they can be found hunting in day or night. It's under cover of darkness where they are the most lethal. They have well-developed sense of sight, hearing, touch, and smell, and they do use all their senses to hunt. They can turn their ears, which help them locate prey by sound. Like many other predators, including humans, they have binocular vision with both eyes facing forward. Because each eye sees the same scene slightly differently, this binocular vision allows their brain to calculate distance, which helps them in getting a prey really quickly. Their ears are especially sensitive to low frequencies, so they can hear animals burrowing underground. If they hear an animal underground, they can dig it up and catch it. So oftentimes, if you're privileged to be able to look out your window and you see a fox that's kind of just slowly moving along the ground and then pounces and comes up with a vole or a mouse or something, this is how they're able to do that. Again, in Connecticut, we have the red and the gray fox. Top right there is the gray fox, and the rest are red fox. And again, the gray fox is the only fox in North America that can climb trees. It's not something I've seen yet. It's on my bucket list to see, but we're very privileged to see any glimpse of wildlife and treasure any of that. Again, foxes are excellent hunters, and they do use their sense of smell and sight, as well as they're very fast and very agile to catch prey. They can hear the sound of a small mammal digging underground from about 150 yards away. So that's pretty amazing. I bet some of your parents would like to hear your kids from that far away. Anyway, they're called the vulpes vulpes. That's their Latin name, the red fox. It does have a call, kind of like people screaming when Jack the Ripper was roaming the streets. The screams of this wild fox can seem disturbingly human at times. Sometimes police have gotten a report. Somebody heard a scream and they thought somebody was being, beat up or killed or whatever. Occasionally, so police have had calls and found out it would be a red fox. This woman out in Ohio, Laura Bess, she doesn't want me to use her last name because a lot of people hunt some of these animals out there. She doesn't want people to know where she is. She's very generous in letting me see a lot of her videos. So I want to play this one of the red fox for you. So I bet you didn't know that's the sound they make. Whoops, supposed to go on there. So just kind of little bark. So the most commonly heard red fox vocalizations are a quick series of barks like that. And then they have kind of a screamy variation on a howl. All of their vocalizations are higher pitched than dog or coyotes, partly because they're smaller. The barks are sort of, oh, wow, 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 but very high pitched, almost yippy. Sometimes some of their noises are mistaken for an owl hooting because owls make all kinds of other noises. They think the bark sequence in a fox is an identification system. Studies indicate that fox can tell each other apart by this call. The screamy howl is most often heard during the breeding season in the springtime. The baby fox has a distress call, which is kind of a hoarse scream of anguish. It sounds kind of like a human baby that's kind of, not happy. It's thought that this call is used by vixens, that's the name for female foxes, to lure male foxes to them for mating. Males have been found to make this sound occasionally. Fox have many, many vocalizations, and we'll talk about who they're mistaken for a lot of times. The bark and scream are very loud, so they're often heard, but a lot of their other ones are kind of quiet and used for communication between individuals in close proximity to them. The most unusual is called geckering. It's a guttural chattering with occasional yelps and howls. It's heard among adults in aggressive encounters, of which there are many because foxes are highly territorial. And it's also among young kids playing or play fighting. They also have alarm calls, which up close sounds like a cough, but from afar it sounds like a sharp bark. It's mostly used by fox parents to alert youngsters to danger. So here's a few fox calls for you. So you can see how that could be used in a horror film. That's the young geckering. as well. So you can see how a lot of these sounds could be magnified by Hollywood to make the scary, scary noises. So that's a little young yipping. You'd almost think it was some kind of a duck or something. So anyway, the fox have a variety of vocalizations. They're also mistaken for other animals. Sorry, I didn't advance. So Wile E. Coyote, the coyote has a very developed sense of smell, and it uses it for finding food and avoiding dangerous predators. They do use their smell like fox to spot prey that is scurrying below the snow or the ground. They use a wide variety of vocalizations in order to communicate with one another. Here you see pictures of two very different looking coyotes. We have coyotes that are reddish, tannish. Some look like that one on the right, sort of German Shepherdish. So there's all different colors to the coyotes here in the eastern coyote here. They have howls, yelps, high-pitched cries are best known. They also bark, they'll growl, wail, and squeal. Family groups yelping in unison create the illusion of a dozen or more performing together. They're most often heard around dawn and dusk, but they might, like some dogs, respond to sirens and fire whistles at any time of day or night. In order to, to not get detected by predators, coyotes sometimes walk on their toes to make as little noise as possible. Basically, the only predators for coyotes here in Connecticut is generally human. The young could be susceptible to other animals, but generally speaking, human would be the top of their predator ladder. So I have a few coyote sounds for you here. Here's some. So that's kind of a typical noise you hear. That's a solo one. That's their little yips kind of talking amongst each other. Here's a challenge bark. But that's a young one. Okay. Uh-oh, I think. So I'm going to play that again and listen at the very start in the background. You can hear a little one yipping while the adult is howling. All right, here's another. Those coyote pups howling together. Quite often you'll hear people say if they hear all these coyotes yelling off in the distance that they killed something and they're all celebrating their kill. Generally that's not true. They generally hunt by themselves, except for when during mating season, and then the alpha male and female will hunt together. So when you hear all those scary yelps all together in a big group, it's generally the family unit communicating. This last one I'm just going to play really quick. This is a coyote catching a cottontail rabbit, so it's kind of sad, but circle of life. So you hear, though, it was like an individual coyote barking during that time. So I have a dog howling in the background. That's not a coyote. So what about us? Though equipped with their own unique defenses, both the skunk and the porcupine prefer nighttime for foraging. Also known as the quill pig, a single porcupine may have 30,000 or more quills. Their quills are made of keratin, like our fingernails and the hair. They're actually hardened hollow hairs with barbed tips that cover all parts of the body except the stomach and a little bit on the face. The quills vary in length, with the longest ones on the back and the shortest ones on the face. Because they're hollow, the quills, they help the porcupines float, so they're unexpectedly good swimmers. If they have to try to get away or they fall in the water from a tree or something, the quills help them float. They're typically very docile animals. They will raise their quills in self-defense when they feel threatened. Typically what they do is that when they feel threatened, they'll sort of just start going in circles, trying to figure out what's going on. And then if they feel really threatened, they will raise their quills. Contrary to popular belief, they do not throw or shoot their quills. But if they are attacked by a predator, including your domestic dog, their barbed quills, which have a little hook on the end, sort of like a fish hook, will hook into the predator's skin, and thus are a persuasive deterrent and a challenge to remove. North American porcupines use their large front teeth to satisfy their healthy appetite for wood. They eat natural bark and stems, and they have been known to invade campgrounds in days of old and chew on canoe paddles when they were made of wood. They also eat fruit, leaves, and springtime buds, but they have very poor vision, but they have a really, really good sense of smell. Besides humans, in New England, the fisher and bobcat are their biggest predator, although mostly the fisher. The fisher does climb trees. It does hunt in the trees. One way it does subdue and kill a porcupine is if it's on the ground, it will circle the porcupine and keep going around and around, and then take a nip at the face every time it can. And it'll keep doing that until the porcupine is weakened. Then it will turn it over and eat it from the belly. So it's pretty obvious. You can tell when a porcupine has been attacked by a fisher. So it's kind of a brutal way to go. But so here's some different porcupines in my area. You can see one in a rock outcropping. That's one place they prefer to nest. They'll also get in the hollows of trees, which I'll show you in a minute. You can see up in the top right, their little hands and claws, their little paws and claws. And porcupines can be any from lighter colored than these and some darker. They are known to be quiet and elusive, but they do have a variety of sounds, including whines, grunts, shrieks, squeals. They're most vocal during mating season or when they're agitated or under threat. So I'm going to show you, there's a little one climbing. It hasn't quite gotten all its quills yet. And there's another one quite puffed out. This is an adult during the spring. And there again is a picture of the one in that little rock outcropping. Here's another porcupine den. You just see it's like an overlay of rock. And on the left is a sign of porcupines chewing on trees. And on the right, you can see a porcupine den, and in the front with the little tongue depressor thing pointing, that is their scat, their poop. So I was privileged to see this year as I was driving my road. I'm kind of on a remote road, and this female porcupine was nursing her young, which is called a porcupette. Of course, it was dark out. I didn't want to really disturb them, so I shot from kind of far away with the headlights of the car. But I was happy just to be able to witness that. And here's another young porcupine. That dot you see below the eye is a tick. All animals tend to get ticks, so as do we. And here's a little porcupine, porcupette and poison ivy that I took a photo of this year. So this woman, Shana Hartley, is in Eastern Ontario, Canada, and she's been kind enough to share some of her videos with me, and I'll show you this one. Again, they do make a little noise. It always amazes me. Some people are so good at videos, and I thought this was a different video. Let me see. That's the same one. I think this is a different one. Okay, so watch this interaction between raccoon and porcupine. Watch over to your right as this raccoon comes along. So that's the porcupine. Kind of scared that raccoon. I like that one a lot, and I'm very grateful to Shayna for letting me use her videos. Again, as I said, people are very, I'll show you that one more time because it's like one of my favorites. This raccoon has no idea, even though it does have a good sense of smell, it's just going along. So that's kind of a good Halloween video. So here they are up in the trees. They do go up in trees and they eat shoots and leaves, and their front teeth turn oranges because they eat the cambium, just like beavers, underneath the bark. Some people don't like it because they do feast on their trees. Here's the little porcupine sound here. It's kind of a little humming sound. They mate in the late summer and early fall and give birth usually to one porcupet in the spring. They're usually solitary and forage and live alone, but they might den together in small groups called a prickle during the winter. Don't you always wonder who makes up all these names? They don't hibernate. They do come out in the winter. They can live up to 30 years, although between 5 and 10 is average because they'll often forage for salt on roadsides and get hit by cars. And at night, let me tell you, we do have them in my area. You likely wouldn't have them in Danbury. The roads are dark and they're very slow creatures. And even though their quills are kind of whitish, they'll go right along the road, kind of waddling. And unfortunately, they do get hit. So there's more to me than meets the nose. The skunk, which, as you know, carries its own lethal weapon. It's a stink that many dogs learn to avoid and some don't. Their sulfuric spray has a range of up to 10 feet, but its odor can be detected up to 1.5 miles. Whenever I see a dead skunk in the middle of the road, remember that song? I always close the vent to my car because that way it doesn't follow me the whole way. They're fairly easygoing animals and they don't often attack unless provoked. They can afford to be, though, because they are equipped with that formidable defense mechanism. They have 2 musk glands equipped with aimable nipples under their tails. And these glands can hold enough for 5 to 6 sprays, so don't think they're done when they spray once. They can accurately spray their musk 10 to 15 feet, and that mist of that can reach 30 feet or more. It does reach to high heaven. If it's close up to your eyes, it will sting the eyes. It might temporarily blind its victim if it's close enough, and it can induce nausea. It's also lasting, as you may know if your dogs have ever been skunked, and it can cling to whatever was sprayed for days. They have several different sulfur-containing compounds in that musk, and that gives it a powerful stench. A threatened skunk will, like many animals, chatter its teeth, turn its back to a threat, stamp its feet, and lift its tail before spraying. If you're confronted by a skunk in threat mode, your best bet is to back away very slowly and quietly away. It's best not to approach skunks or startle them. They have very poor eyesight, but they do have an excellent senses of smell and hearing. They are omnivorous, which means they eat both plant and animal material, and they will change their diets as the seasons change. So they'll eat anything from insects to larvae, to rodents, to lizards, to salamals. They also commonly eat berries, roots, leaves, fungi, and nuts. So there's a lot for them to eat. Here's a little skunk sound here. So very kind of timid like they are. Okay, contrast to ferocities. The opossum is North America's only marsupial. That means it carries its young in a pouch. It wakes at twilight to begin its search for fruit, roots, insects, small mammals, or anything it can find. It has very few defenses, as we know, beyond its habit of playing dead when threatened. It derives its protective advantage in the dark, but they also have more teeth than any mammal in North America. So when they feel threatened, sometimes they show their teeth to try to scare off whatever's coming. And the other good news, it eats a lot of ticks. They estimate about 5,000 ticks a year. I don't know how they count that or who counts it, but that's what they say. I wanted to show this picture. This is a skunk that was called a non-target species that was caught this winter during the bobcat collaring project. And the biologists are very tender and gentle, and they go out immediately to release the animal. And you can see here that the possum is being checked to make sure it's okay, and then it will be sent on its way. They have several defense mechanisms. As I say, they do growl, they belch, they urinate when threatened. They show those teeth, but the most famous one they're known for is playing possum, similar to playing dead. However, the mechanism is not them pretending. It's a natural involuntary reaction, a lot like fainting, that causes the possum to seize up. And when it's in that state, they sometimes will also bare their teeth or foam at the mouth. They produce foul smelling fluids from anal glands to mimic sickness, hoping that whatever the predator is, it won't attack it. Once catatonic, it can remain like that for up to 4 hours. And it's a pretty effective deterrent against predators that typically avoid dead stuff. So it plays dead. Some predators don't like to eat dead stuff unless there's nothing else around, so they'll move on. Possums are also very misunderstood, but they are great to have around. They're very peaceful, docile, unlikely to threaten pets or carry disease, and they do help keep the pest populations under control. Instead of shooing them away, let them hang around, and they'll clean up ticks, venomous snakes, discarded birdseed, and more. Of all the wildlife visitors in your backyard, they're probably one of the best to have around. So if you find a possum hit on the road, please check, because a lot of times the young, if they're in the mother's sac, do survive. And then you can take them to a rehabilitator and maybe save their lives. Like many animals that have not many defenses, like mice and other animals, they have a lot of young. Then that ensures that some will survive. Shrinking carnivores of Connecticut or not, these are the bobcat and the fisher. This was a bobcat that was sleeping on my deck on the left. I think it was a winter before last, and then it got up, so I was taking photos through my window. This shows those canines. It was yawning, not growling or anything, but I thought it just really showed those canines and how spaced apart they are. They have keen senses of vision and hearing, the bobcat. Their sense of smell is also developed, but they are more dependent upon sight and sound to aid their style of hunting. The noise of screeching bobcats has been likened to a child wailing in distress. Typically a sound made by competing males in winter during the mating season. It can be heard in many regions of North America. But a lot of times, many people wouldn't guess it was bobcats that woke them up in the night. They are elusive and naturally cautious, particularly around humans. They're almost wholly nocturnal in urban areas. So if you're ever seen, but with our Bobcat project, we have found that a lot of them are more urban than we had suspected, because guess what? All those dumpsters and garbage have prey species like mice and rats and other little critters that they can eat. The fisher on the right there is a mid-sized carnivore, the second largest member of the weasel family in Connecticut, the river otter being the largest. Despite its name, it rarely consumes fish or aquatic prey. They're renowned for their ability, as I said, to prey upon porcupines, and they're unique among forest carnivores because they're very well adapted to forage effectively either in the forest canopy or on the forest floor. They are opportunistic and their diet is diverse. They will eat small mammals, reptiles, insects, fruits, and fungi. As consumers of fruits and shrubs and trees, primarily during summer, they become mammalian seed dispersers when they poop, of course, in forest ecosystem. I remember somebody asked me one time, what good is a bear? I said, well, bears eat berries, right? They eat nuts. Yeah. I said, well, then they disperse seeds. So that's true of a lot of animals. But small mammals such as squirrels, chipmunks, and mice are thought to be dominant prey sources for fisher in most seasons. There is evidence of white-tailed deer predation, but generally that would be in the winter. A lot of snow, maybe an ill deer. So they're quite a good killing machine, these fisher. They're often blamed for a nighttime sound like a scream. If you Google scream in the night, you'll get about 50 guys pointing out into the darkness on a YouTube video saying, listen, that's a fisher cat. Well, it's not a cat, as I said, it's a weasel. And the fishers very rarely make any noise. They do have a little growl. Most of those vocalizations you hear, those screams in the night, are generally fox. Fisher can rotate their hind feet, which allows them to descend a tree head first. So that also helps them in hunting. So Carol Cookingham Bellinger has loaned me the next photos, but I'll play this fisher growl first. So that's the sound. They are silent predators pretty much, but if they're cornered or, hurt, they will make that growl. So Carol, a friend of mine in Maine, has loaned me these pictures. She had these fisher just living out in her backyard, and she was able to take these fantastic photos. So this is pretty much the profile of a fisher as it goes along. Here's his tracks on a log. I encourage you after snow falls to go outside the next morning early and see what has come along. Here's the young on the top left. Very excellent photos. If you're gonna try to figure out what tracks are, try to put something down so you kind of have a sense of how big they are. Then you can look up different tracks and try to figure it out. My friend Janet Pesatoro wrote a great book called The Camera Trapping Guide, and I would recommend you to get it. I don't get any cut, but she not only tells you how to set up cameras, but she also has like kind of field guide to the kind of species we have in New England. Here's in Naugatuck, Charlie Schaefer let me have these photos just to show you. Yes, fisher might be wandering around your cars. So I'm going to take a sip. So again, that's kind of what they look like. So that brings us to the bobcat. I'm sure a lot of you've probably seen them. We had a lot of more wildlife sightings during COVID. Guess why? Because we were all at home sitting looking outside. So George Graham, who lives in Western Mass, loaned me this, let me have this video to show you, and I thank George. So listen to this and look at that tapetum lucidum, that eye shine on this bobcat. So that would be in mating season. Sorry. Here's some other bobcat sounds. This bobcat on the bottom right. I went outside on my deck one day and I'm surrounded on three sides by People's State Forest. And I thought something was looking at me. And there was this bobcat just as pretty as could be right there just looking at me. So I was able to get the photo. So here's some bobcat sounds here. Bobcat cries is the first one. What is it? Sounds almost like a cat amplified, doesn't it? Here's a growl. So that's a very unhappy bobcat. It could be like having another male in the area and just kind of going at each other. And here's some sorted bobcat sound. Again, they do have that guttural growl. So again, kind of spooky. You probably wouldn't know what that was, but maybe now you will. Here's another video provided by George, and this is interesting because this shows you a few of the animal species that we've talked about. So you'll see a bobcat, a fisher, I think a coyote, and maybe a bear. And if you look at to the left from our view of where that the log is across and there's that little piece of log sticking up, you'll find a lot of the animals start scent marking that. So. That's a coyote that was scared by something. Here's the fisher. It's scent marking, so it's probably urinating and putting its musk smell on that. All animals do some sort of scent marking. Here it comes back again. You can see the date change over there. And there's two bobcats in the distance there. Male and female. You see the size difference. Here's that same fisher coming back. I wonder if he knows it's him that marks before. But there have been other animals there. And coyotes are very, very wary, as you can see. That light is kind of like, no, I don't think I want to stay here. I think I'll go. And there you see the fisher has kind of a green eye shine you saw before when the light was directly on it. So I'm very thankful to George for letting me use that. So just quickly, this doesn't have to do with sounds in the night, but these are young bobcats playing. I thought you'd enjoy it. You can see the white marks on the back of their ears very clearly in this, which is one of the best identifiers in that bobtail. Not unlike kitties playing together. And if you look, they all have little different coats. It's like fingerprints. They all have different markings. Playing with a pine cone. So anyway, that's a little off topic, but I thought you'd enjoy it. So, here's a martin. This is a mink noise right here. We do not have the pine martin in Connecticut, but we do have the mink, and that's kind of the difference in what they look like. So you see, we got a lot of animals that growl. So here's the little weasel. We have a short and long eared weasel, tailed weasel. The long-tailed weasel is found throughout Connecticut, but it's very elusive, so it's very difficult to be seen. I've seen one crossing a road. They have a very high metabolism, all weasels, and that requires them to consume 30 to 40% of their body weight daily, which is a lot. They rely on thick, brushy habitats, so again, you might not see them. They do reside in stone walls and feed on small mammals, mice, voles, chipmunks, other things. So the short and long-tailed weasel. So bats everywhere. So thanks to Bram Stoker's Dracula and other literature that demonizes bats, our impressions of this mammal are mostly that it is creepy and is looking to bite you and give you rabies. This is very far from the truth. And as for them carrying rabies, less than 1% of bats have rabies, although there are millions and millions of bats. But excuse me, these are the type of bats we have in Connecticut. Excuse me a second. Little brown bat, big brown bat, which I've seen recently, the eastern long-eared bat, the eastern pipistrelle, silver-haired bat, hoary bat, red bat, and Indiana bat. Bats are furred, warm-blooded mammals with body lengths of 3 to 6 inches and wingspans ranging from 8 to 16 inches. They have very good eyesight, unlike people say they're blind, they're not. They do rely on vision for long distance orientation, but for short distance navigation and catching food, they use echolocation. It's kind of like a sonar system that helps them, and like dolphins, locate targets and background objects from the echoes of ultrasonic sounds. Pretty incredible. These ultrasonic sounds are given slowly when a bat is foraging and quicken as it pursues and captures an insect. They eat lots of mosquitoes, so we like bats. Detection, pursuit, and capture of an insect can take about 1 second. Night insects have the most to fear from bats. Each night, these bats can eat their body weight or more in insects, numbering in the thousands. And because they eat so many insects, which have exoskeletons made of a shiny material called chitin, some of the bats' guano or poop sparkles. Cool, but weird fact. This insect-heavy diet helps foresters and farmers protect their crops from pests. Bats have few natural predators. Disease is one of the biggest. Owls, hawks, and snakes eat bats, but that's nothing compared to the millions and millions of bats that died from the white nose syndrome. This disease, named for a white fungus on the muzzle and wings of bats, affects hibernating bats, and it's been detected in 33 states and 7 Canadian provinces. More than 10 million bats have died from this, so it has put a pretty big chink in our bat population. Scientists are working hard to understand the disease. Bats are night creatures that eat lots of insects that ironically bite you. They may be small, but they're fast little creatures. How fast they fly kind of depends on the species, but some species can reach over 100 miles per hour. Pretty incredible. They also are inspiring medical marvels. About 80 medicines come from plants that rely on bats for their survival. Again, they're not blind, but scientists are studying echolocation to help develop navigational aids for the blind. There also been a lot of research on bats has led to advances in various vaccines. So bats are our friends. So here's some little bat sounds. The first is a large group of bats, kind of mostly flying. The next one are bats chattering. The next are bats, you'll hear them squeaking while they're flying by. And then this, I think, is another large group of bats flying. So bats are the only flying mammal we have, but we do have called the flying squirrel. They can only glide for short distances. The bats are true flyers. A bat's wing resembles modified human hand. Imagine the skin between your fingers, larger, thinner, and stretched. That flexible skin membrane that extends between each long finger bone and many movable joints make the bats agile flyers. We have 2 species of flying squirrel, the northern and southern species. The southern is smaller. It's about 8 to 10 inches in length, while the northern are 10 to 12 inches long. We have more southern than northern flying squirrels, go figure. They might more appropriately be called gliding squirrels because, again, they're not capable of true powered flight that a bird or bat can do. They glide. They have that special membrane you can see there between their front and back legs that allow them to glide through the air between trees. When they want to travel to one tree to another without touching the ground, They'll launch themselves from a high branch, spread out their limbs so the membrane is exposed, and they use slight movements of their legs to steer, and their tail acts as a brake upon reaching their destination. They can cover more than 150 feet in a single glide. It's pretty amazing. As you can see, they have very big round eyes. That's why people think they're so cute. This trait typically indicates infancy in mammals, like the wide eyes that endear us to puppies and children. Flying squirrels retain this disproportionately plump peepers into adulthood. They did evolve big eyes to collect more light for better night vision. Again, that's an adaptation shared by many nocturnal mammals. Here's one coming in for a landing, and they just make a little noise. So you wouldn't likely hear them probably. So stealth builders, night moves, another animal that's out at night, which you most likely won't hear unless you're sitting out by a beaver dam, because they exclusively are pretty much night creatures. They do come out a little bit before dark, and they will be out a little bit before, after dawn. But they pretty much build their dams at night. The beavers are rodent like rats, mice, and squirrels, but it's North America's largest rodent. They can weigh between 30 and 60 pounds. They're typically 35 to 52 inches long from head to the tip of the tail. They are semi-aquatic rodents. They live in and around water. Their bodies are uniquely suited to their environment. They have that nictitating membrane that closes over their eyes so they don't get water in their eyes. Their ears have something that closes their ears up so they don't get ears in their ears and nose. And then they have these fur-lined lips. I've never seen a picture of it, but it actually closes off their throat so they can carry a stick underwater. They can stay underwater for 15 minutes, pretty incredible. They live up to 15, 20 years in the wild, if not trapped. They are a keystone species, which means they have a disproportionately large effect on their environment relative to their abundance. They are very an ecosystem engineer. They create, change, or destroy a habitat, but there's probably no clear example of a keystone species than the beaver. River ecosystems rely on them to take down old dead trees along river banks to allow new, healthier trees to grow. They create wetlands that are valuable sources for many species, from birds to animals. So though you're likely to see them out and about at dawn and dusk, it's rare to find them gnawing trees or building dams. Again, most of that's done at night. I'll let you hear a little noise they make. That's their tail splashing, which they use to warn somebody to get out of the way or tell the family in the lodge that something's around. That's it gnawing. It's the babies in the lodge. So that's the beaver. We have the fabulous river otter. You're lucky if you get to see it. It's very fun. They hang around, they're carnivores. They hang around waterways. Typically, unlike the beavers, even though beavers are known for their families and their lodges, and they keep their young till their second year, when they're out in the water, they're generally by themselves. If two or three are working on a dam, they'll be in separate spaces. The otter tends to hang around in groups, and they'll swim in groups and they play. But they also have like a little snarl. And they have a little whistle. And then they have a little whistle snarl, sorry. I was very privileged when I was hiking in the Isle of Mull in Scotland to be able to see a Eurasian otter fishing for like 30 minutes. It was quite the thing to see. Okay. So, hey, didn't you forget a critter or two? So black bears, these are two, a female and her yearling in the spring, early spring, and they do come out in the day, obviously. Some of the reasons because people have birdseed out or garbage out, but they tend to be around almost whenever they choose. So here's some of the noise that the black bear can make. Those are the little ones like in the den, just making little noises. Oops, I'm trying to stop it. Hold on. So a black bear, when it gets a little agitated, it will moan. It doesn't. A black bear really doesn't growl, but it has this deep guttural moan like you just heard. And this one, I'm not sure. We'll see what it is. So if a black bear is agitated, it will click its teeth and kind of hiss, and that's pretty much like, hey, stand back, I don't really like you here. It's very unlikely that it's going to charge you because they're not aggressive like, sorry, I just have one of those, I call them devil bugs, but those stink bugs just crawling on my keyboard. But they will make noises like that to just warn you to, stay back. So part of the night's cacophony, we all know this. So the first we hear is the spring peeper. And they can get very, very loud, and then we'll start hearing the wood frog. Then you'll start hearing the bullfrog. Then sometime in the summer we hear them all together.